My friends, if you permit me just for a few moments to reflect on why as Christians we shouldn't really be afraid of dying or afraid of death, and why we have hope in what comes after this life, for ourselves and also for our loved ones. I mean, look at one of the reasons why we bring our loved ones to a church for funeral service or funeral mass is that we come here to focus our thoughts, but more particularly our prayers, okay, to gently usher our loved one into the arms of God. And we do so by giving them honour and dignity, by both prayer and a celebration of their life in one respects. And look, there's one thing when we come to a funeral that we can't escape, and that is the stark reality of death. I mean, there's often the coffin directly in front of our faces, and for a lot of people, that can be a really scary thing. A lot of people have a great fear of death, of dying, and it's a pity. There's no need to be afraid of death or of dying. And look, let's be real, with the loss of God in so many people's lives, is it any wonder a lot of people struggle to even prepare for this thing that we're all going to have to face at some point in our lives. And when it comes to death of a loved one, it can make it a little bit more difficult if we don't have God in our lives to help us get through the difficult mourning and bereavement that we face. And look, perhaps with this cocooning and this staying at home, we all have a little bit more time in our hands to maybe just sit and pause and ask, like I said before, some of the bigger questions of life, such as what happens to me after death, if anything, which a lot of people don't believe in. And I suppose that brings us, my friends, to two important points. One, there's a huge growth in atheism at the moment, where a lot of people would say, well, when we die, that's it, no more. We had a good run of it. A lot of people, and that's where you are, that's where you are. That's just the way a lot of people are at the moment. And then again, there's other people who, the second point would be that people who believe in New Age spiritualities and indeed in the rise of paganism once again. A lot of them would say something along the lines of, well, when we pass, our energy becomes zapped either into the earth or into the universe, become part of the cosmic dust, if you will. And that's fair enough, that's where you're at, that's where you're at. I know I'm being general when I say that, but look, I don't know about you, but I find those things quite vague. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to the passing of a loved one and our struggle to understand what's going on and why and this, that and the other, we need something a little bit more solid to stand upon. Something that gives us hope, and hope that we can actually trust in. And you know, I think Christ is very clear on what happens to us when we pass, all right? Just for a few moments, I want to read one or two passages from Scripture. And in particular, I'm going to start with reading the Gospel of John, where he speaks to Martha and says, I am the resurrection and the life. If anyone believes in me, even though they die, they will live. Do you believe this? It's a good question. And as we all know, one of the most common, if not the most common phrase in Scripture is, do not be afraid. And he says again in a later point, don't let your hearts be troubled. I'm going now to prepare a place for you, so that where I am, you may be as well. I am the way, the truth and life. My friends, we shouldn't take those passages too lightly. In actual fact, I think there's something massive for all of us in those few words of Jesus. I mean, he seems really clear on what happens to us when we pass away. That life changes, but it doesn't end, as one of the beautiful Eucharistic prayers pray about. And not only that, he tells us there's a place that's prepared for each and every one of us, that he takes us there himself. A place of light, a place of peace, of no more suffering of any kind. My friends, Jesus, like I said, he's not been vague in any shape or form. If anything, he's been really specific with us. He's speaking about the kingdom that he brought with him, the kingdom that he constantly speaks about and acts out in his time in Jerusalem, Judea and Galilee. I know a question arises for a lot of people. Can we trust in what this carpenter of Nazareth is talking about? It's a really good question. Well, look, let's be clear about Jesus just for a moment. When we're talking about Jesus, remember who you were talking about. We're talking about somebody who underwent an excruciating death on a piece of wood in the shape of a cross. Out of love, I might add, for you, for me, and all our loved ones. Why? Why did he do such a thing? My friends, he did that for one specific reason. so that death could not have the final say in our lives anymore. That we could reach that place he promises us all. And out of his death, he pulls all darkness, sin and death away from us, so we can reach that beautiful kingdom which he says prepared for each and every one of us since the foundation of the world. And I don't know about you, my friends, but I don't think Jesus was much of a liar. Okay? I think, he knew and knows what he's talking about. There's no middle ground when it comes to Christ. It's either true or it's not, And again, the questions he asks Martha, do you believe this? It's a question we all need to ponder on. And in these days, my friends, of the coronavirus, when so many families are really struggling with bereavement, my friends, turn to Christ. Turn to his words of trust, his words of hope, because they are words we can all rely on when darkness starts to set in our lives. Don't give up, do not be afraid, and don't be afraid of death. May God bless, protect you and your families.